So welcome to International Day of Science. Yes. And if you are ready, we can start with your presentation.
Yeah, sure. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction. Do you see my slides?
Not yet. There's a short delay usually before uploading them, before presenting them. But yes, we see them right now.
Okay, I just want to share again because I unshared. Okay, 1 second. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so hello everyone. It's a pleasure for me to present this international conference here at the IDS, at the international conference, the paper which is titled Business Schools and COVID Challenges, which is the evidence from the selected European countries. Myself, Emil Velinov, and along with my head of the department, Mr. Pavel Strach, he is not able to join, but I will present this paper. So taking into the topic before I start with the presentation, the motivation beyond this study which we conducted at our university was imminently, of course, the pandemic period. We wanted to find out from student perspectives along with our European partners, which are also business schools, what actually is the impact of COVID from perspective of the student eyes or from the students' perception. The motivation was also driven by the fact that also in the literature, recent literature, that we found out a lot of sources which is referring to the modern higher education on management that has been significantly impacted and affected by the world pandemic. And we particularly focus on not only emerging markets from Eastern Europe, but as you can see here, there is evidence that actually the pandemic changed, particularly higher education in emerging economies like Philippines, Nigeria, India, Saudi Arabia, and many others. Another factor is here that actually the business schools, they have to, compete in very harsh environment where pandemic is only, of course, one of the main, let's say, challenges. But another, according to this literature review, another factor is that the increasing competitiveness across the business schools. Because this is another factor which is emerging. Third factor is the teaching effectiveness, because the business schools, of course, they have to measure the impact also of how teaching is delivered, how the process of teaching is leading into success for the students, how the students, of course, perceive that, because these studies are mainly that are through the eyes or in the students' perception. Then last but not least, we're speaking here also about, when we're speaking about global management education, about integrity and accountability. Because in the online delivery, we simply understand that the ethical dimensions and also the accountability and responsibility for all stakeholders, starting from teachers and students, needs to be on a very high level. Otherwise, this I would say teaching effectiveness cannot have decent level. And all stakeholders, of course, here, they need to be accountable and responsible for that. That's also another factor supported by, world literature. More, if we're digging out on the global management education, we have to say that there is also the so-called significant societal impact on the tertiary education, because actually a lot of the business schools, they reorientated their activities, cooperation with other stakeholders, key partners. For example, establishing business incubators, launching courses and trainings for the society, for third parties, for the schools, cooperation with other schools, particularly high schools. Also, the pandemic accelerated, of course, the implementation of digital platforms, as one of them, which we are using now, Microsoft, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and many others. Also, the pandemic impacted significantly the internationalization of the business schools, because the business schools in the pandemic time, they had to basically internationalize through online, platforms, or they had to internationalize at home, or so-called home internationalization, which also in the past the university either didn't focus on that, or they at least weren't forced to do so. But now in the pandemic, all this shift of the operations, I would say, of the business schools significantly affected the perception of what business school is and how the business school have to orientate, what disciplines to be included, how this process, teaching and learning process, will be looking like. And at the moment, of course, we're going through a huge transformation. The internationalization abroad, on the other hand, was triggered again by the pandemic, because we can see nowadays that there are more and more offerings from different business schools, which are offering, for example, summer schools, spring schools, international weeks, online, which means that they're forced to do. Actually, some of them do it hybrid, as you're doing, guys, now. The research questions and the research methods here are mainly, as I said, we focus on the how the pandemic changed, the direction of these business schools through the eyes of the students. So we have launched here online survey, which we did it through the Google Forms in the period of September to December last year. So it was in the fall semester last year, across 4 European countries, because we are virtually cooperating. Our university is called Aalto University. We have a project in the international management course. We are cooperating with another 3 universities, business schools. One is in the UK, one is in Germany, and one is in Iceland. So all European countries, all European business schools, very similar background, very similar operations. And we try to see eventually how in that period, what has changed in comparison to before. So here we have the structure of the respondents, what we already collected. Due to the low respondent numbers from Iceland, because initially we just got only 7 respondents, we changed the Icelandic partner with Estonia. So we proceeded because, as I said, we wanted to get similar sample size from all the participants. So as you see here, the average age of the participants, of the students in this case, and then the breakdown by bachelor and master students, and then also in which semester of their studies are. So this is the data sample. Moving to the study results, so we, by applying, because we have used extended Likert scale 1 to 7, where 1 is, completely dissatisfied, 7 is very satisfied. Overall, we saw that even though these universities and business schools, our partners, including ourselves, where the students completely said that, of course, they see these online working, studying, as completely new, because it significantly changed also their daily routines. It changed their, even I would say, lifestyles. They were rather satisfied, and they were rather satisfied in terms of score, in terms of perception from their perspective. So we can see here that first we send a questionnaire with 17 questions, where there were questions about what is the perception of the students of how they see the business universities, for example, from tuition fee, from a working climate, also friendliness and competent lectures, which means that is more related to the quality of the lectures delivered by the teachers, the professors. Then we ask another questions about the innovativeness of the university. In the innovativeness, it was not only simply if the university use or apply Microsoft Teams, Zoom, or any other platform, but the innovativeness comes from the perspective of how these curricular development actually corresponds with the enhancements of this latest technology. So it means that how the students, of course, see from perspective of interaction, from perspective of communication with the respective teachers, and also how the students are provided also feedback. So it was here the scores were rather satisfying, as you see, from 1 to 7. Then moving to the next type of questions, because in the questionnaire we had also questions about utilization of the technology, which nowadays I think it's also imperial part of the online teaching and learning process. So here, of course, the scores the scores were rather mixed, because as you can see, particularly when it comes to utilization intensivity of these technologies in combination with online libraries and databases, here in students' eyes, the scores weren't that good, because they were even under 4, which means that some of the business schools, from the selected business schools, couldn't really, I would say so far, of course, as of December 2020, enhance all these technologies when it comes to looking or searching for online sources, because we know that during coronavirus, actually the library is supposed to be kind of like the strongest tool where the students can browse and see actually articles, monographies, many others needed for their studies. The use of internet here, as it was before COVID, it was very high score, because the students in the business schools are very used to using different internet search engines. Of course, surprisingly, we got very low score on the social media portals, because either in some business schools, the social media portals are not very common to be used, but not in all 4 schools. For example, schools in Estonia or here ourselves, we allow and the students intensively use, for example, the social media to communicate out with other stakeholders, to collect data and so on. The video channels, and when it comes to YouTube utilization, of course, also here there is I would say, huge room for potential for increase, because through video channels, of course, there are a lot of activities, particularly in the business school, which take place. And then we shifted to the community, which is the conference technologies, where already all business schools here, the selected, they highly apply these conference technologies. Then the cloud-based groupware, that's also something what our or at least our business schools also implemented intensively, especially in the last half a year, 1 year. And then at the end we focus here also on the use of particular other group chats, for example, like WhatsApp, like WeChat, because in the virtual cooperation, when it comes, these platforms, they were really accelerated across all 4 universities here. And we can say that they're also very much intensively used by the students, and also helped a lot in their communication. And at the end, the learning portals, which are the university portals, they have been used, I would say, moderately, because the pandemic didn't increase that so much, because it was for the price that the external kind of applications or apps, they were increased. So in the discussion, we have to say that immediately here, as I said, the student perception of the selected schools in terms of usage and innovativeness, I would say was significantly impacted by the technology, at least from the student perspective. Also, the result shows that the overall, I would say, international orientation is still high across these business schools, because they kept in touch, through the platforms. They did a lot of, as I said, joint programs and curricular internationalization and development, especially in the COVID time. Then the iCloud services usage, which is the applicability, highly increased, and it brought the importance of platforms like WeChat, WhatsApp, and YouTube, for example, that their usage is increasing. And then at the end here, last but not least, when we are speaking about curriculum development, we have to say that across these 4 business schools, the curriculum was also developed and advanced from perspective of finding more subjects into bringing the internationalization, because simply the mobilities, the physical mobilities, they were sharply decreased. So in conclusion, I have to say that in the sample, the business schools, they were first of all forced, of course, by the COVID-19, but also in this harsh and turbulent environment, they were very much rolled out their different technologies and tools in the learning process, and this, of course, it was I would say thanks to COVID. Also, the pandemic led into increasing of a competitiveness and adaptability towards different education market, because these business schools, of course, fully understand that in the global education market, they have to focus on these, bringing more students from different countries. And last but not least, the positive, of course, student perception, overall positive student perception, led into the fact that the universities only are looking now for more sustainable, of course, models for keeping their, lessons, seminars, lectures extremely, I would say, interactive by applying different ad hoc apps, which of course significantly help both sides, not only learners to get engaged, but also for the educators to be more motivated and to continue. So that's it from my side. Thank you so much. I'll be happy if there are any comments, questions, and so on. Thank you.